What is dog laundering? Adopted dogs are returned to the shelter due to aggressive behavior and bites or attacks, where the dogs are put up for adoption again and again. The dogs end up going out of the shelter and from family to family. Every time the dogs are readopted, the shelter counts that as a save, increasing the shelter's save rate. This is called dog laundering. As part of Best Friends Shelter program, for a shelter to reach the 90% save rate, the shelter will adopt out dogs they know are dangerous and with a bite history to unsuspecting members of the public without disclosing the dangerous history of the dogs. In this handbook from Best Friends, they post pictures of dogs looking happy and wearing a bandana, misrepresent the dog's characteristics, a dog's aggressive behavior, and the bite history is never to be disclosed to the volunteers, fosters, or adopters. When potential adopters come to look at the dog, you must give a false impression of the dog would be a good family pet. There's a picture there, a photo of an attack on a 13-year-old girl by a dog named Blue, adopted from Los Angeles Animal Services Shelter using Best Friends Shelter program. Blue's first owner gave Blue to the shelter after a biting incident. The shelter, per Best Friends protocol, failed to disclose the bite history of the dog to the adopter.
The dog's gone to sleep.
Following the attack, the dog was put up for adoption again per Best Friends
It
policy.
fell asleep on me.
Next, there's a photo of Argelina. Both of her arms were mauled in a vicious attack by a dog adopted from Los Angeles Animal Services that follows the Best Friends Shelter program. One arm had to be amputated almost to the shoulder. The dog, named OG, was brought into the shelter after it attacked a jogger, biting both of his arms. The attack was unprovoked. The dog attacked in an aggressive and vicious manner, and the injuries it inflicted were severe, according to the police report and shelter records. The shelter, per Best Friends protocol, failed to disclose the bite history of the dog to Argelina. At another shelter using Best Friends Shelter program, a volunteer, Eve, sustained permanent and severe muscle, nerve, and tissue damage, and now has very limited function in her disfigured and disabled right arm and hand after an unprovoked attack by Henry. Eve had absolutely no warning from the shelter staff that Henry had attacked in the past. At the time of Eve's attack, the shelter, following Best Friends procedure, had just put Henry up for adoption a fifth time after having been returned by earlier adopters for aggressive behavior and killing another animal, a family pet, in one of the adoptive homes. Please rescind the contract.
Thank you, Mr.
With Best
Fierro.
Friends.
You've reached the 3 minutes. Next speaker is Barbara Valencia, also on the same topic.
Okay, I will continue on where Mr. Fierro left off. Carolyn was killed by a dog her son adopted 2 weeks earlier from a Pasco County shelter using Best Friends Shelter program. Her son was badly injured in the attack while trying to save her. The dog had been adopted out and returned twice due to aggressive behavior, one resulting in a severe bite, prior to her son adopting the dog. The shelter, per Best Friends protocol, failed to disclose the aggressive behavior and bite history of the dog to her son. And most recently, a 6-year-old girl was attacked by the dog the family adopted from Palm Valley Animal Shelter using the Best Friends Shelter program. The attack resulted in having half her face ripped off. The attack occurred just 8 days after the family adopted the dog. Shelter record states the dog's demeanor was aggressive towards people. Documentation from shelter staff states aggressive snaps and growls. The shelter, following Best Friends protocol, did not disclose the dog's aggressive behavior to the family, which includes 4 children under the age of 10 living in the home. The day after this attack, the shelter put the dog back up for adoption in accordance with Best Friends policy. The dog has been adopted out and returned 3 more times for aggressive behavior since the attack on the 6-year-old little girl. This is happening at every shelter using Best Friends Shelter program, and it will happen here. Shelters using Best Friends Shelter program are knowingly putting the public at risk by adopting and readopting out dogs with aggressive behavior and bite history without full disclosure and by lying about the dog's behavior. This is dog laundering. Such conduct is negligent and reckless. The courts have determined Best Friend puts in place, as part of their shelter program, nefarious practices of aggressive animals in plain sight and concealing what they know to be their dangerous past and prior acts of violence. Local government and their shelters that willfully choose to use Best Friends programs, policies, and procedures do so at their own peril. The courts go on to say the primary duty of any government is to protect the health and safety of its citizens. A municipal shelter acting on behalf of the government using Best Friend Shelter Program is negligently, recklessly, and knowingly endangering public health and safety. The government and the shelter cannot hide its reckless conduct behind a veneer of animal welfare and conservation in order to achieve a no-kill status. City Council, this is your notification that you are negligently, recklessly, and knowingly endangering the health and safety of the citizens of El Paso with the continued use of Best Friend Shelter Program. The courts have said the city will be held responsible and liable for these actions. Ms. Hernandez, you are now officially notified. Because you told me 2 weeks ago, well, you can't sue the city if we don't know that this has happened. Now you know it has happened. Thank you.
Don't misrepresent my statements, Mrs. Barbara, please. And I'm happy to talk to you directly after this. Please.
No, that's exactly
The
what you
next
told me.
speaker is Ron Como.
Don't misrepresent
Thank you.
my statement.
Thank you, ma'am.
No, you told
Mr.
me.
Como.